inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Those who are live streaming, could you put your hands up? Okay. Bismillah. We have currently done Islam, and we looked at Islam and what that means. I read through your feedback, which is mashallah very encouraging to hear that so much positivity and so much benefit is being felt. That's very encouraging, alhamdulillah. And some of the suggestions I have taken on, inshallah, we may see some of that today. Right then. Mashallah, the girls have increased by half. I was afraid because it's Halloween, some of you may miss it. Okay, here's our reading. I like the microphone. It's fine, you will
one is rewarded for the performance of it and punished for non-performance of it. And Sunnah recommended. One is rewarded for the performance of it, but is not punished by non-performance of it. Mubah, permissible. One is neither rewarded nor punished for the performance or non-performance of it. The rule is like one is not punished for the performance of it, but is rewarded for abstaining from it. Haram, unlawful. One is punished by performance of it and rewarded by abstaining from it.
How much of that do you understand? Does anybody have any questions you'd like me to explain it? It's in your slides from last week. Any question you don't understand that? Explain.
I just want the clarification again. Do you know, in the mandub, in the sunnah, something doesn't necessarily have to be the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to be mandub, does it?
Exactly. Girls, you okay? Excellent. Again, these slides, at the end of the class, these will be uploaded. You're going to get them a lot more quicker than you have them. And they'll be available on LJMU through
a QR code.
Through a QR code that we'll get. That's a different QR code to yours, right?
It doesn't really make a difference. So if LGMU people want to use that, they can. If not, I can put LGMU one up.
Okay. What did he just say? Listen. Okay. How has Islam?
How has Islam been understood, preserved, and transmitted by the vast majority of scholars, the vast majority of our history?
What do I mean by Islam? Zane, I missed you. Last week you were here. I went home and I realized, who's missing this area? Who's missing? It took me a few days later. I'm missing. And I saw you on Jum'ah. I remember. Everything okay?
Yeah, I had fever last week.
High fever. Your absence was noticed. What do I mean by Islam?
Islam as a religion and all the practices associated with Islam.
So specifically in the Hadith of Jibreel, Islam is what? So
The 5 pillars.
So when I say Islam here, I mean the 5 pillars. From our sisters, who can answer that question? Oh, you got a microphone as well. Excellent. You guys on top of it. Good. What's in there?
Shahada. Fasting, praying, zakah, and hajj.
Yes. Right. So that's what we mean by Islam. And who can tell me the answer? Hands up. everybody to have a hand in, because I've been talking about this for a semester. Huh?
Four madhabs.
The four madhabs, Bismillah. Anybody has them?
Madhabs, the way of the Orthodox Muslims is to follow one of these four schools. Following the tabligh is defined as taking the opinion of another person without knowing its evidence. Any question you have in Islam that is asking if something is permissible, obligatory, haram, or just simply, can I do such and such, can be answered by seeing what the four madhabs said. It is compulsory to follow one of the four schools in matters of law. Following is not deviancy, rather it is the path of guidance.
And if you remember, we mentioned that people who don't follow recognized schools of law. And look, I mentioned four, that's within Sunni Islam. And as we go on through the lectures, there are other schools that are valid. But this is within the Sunni tradition. So somebody who claims to be a Sunni, for example, and does not follow these four schools, then historically his issues, the massive issues. I'll give you some really, you guys asked for recommended readings. Here is a hope here, inshallah. If you click on that, inshallah, then it'll take you to the articles. Right, so understanding the four madhabs is, for me, one of the most impressive explanations of the whole issue of madhabs. When I was 19, I read this article and it really changed my whole perception on the matter and really kind of educated me. The fact that I'm using it some years later, I should tell you how important the article is and has been. This is also a very good article by Sheikh Why Muslims Follow Madhabs. The first article is quite academic. Hakim Murad is a Cambridge professor, but nonetheless, extremely interesting article. Sheikh Noah's article perhaps a bit more easier to kind of digest and to get to grips with. Again, another article by Sheikh Noah. What is a madhab? Why is it necessary to follow it? Again, you click on it and it will take you to the websites in which these articles can be read. And perhaps one of the most influential talks done on this topic, in my opinion, is by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Prerequisites of a Mujtahid, groundbreaking lecture, given that it was done in 1995 when I was doing my GCSEs. That changed the tide of classical Islam in this country in ways that we're still feeling today. Excellent, excellent. And that's a really good book, Al-Lam Madhabiyya by Sheikh Muhammad Sa'id al-Mudasabuti, alayhi rahmatullah. Again, that book can be bought from this article. If you're going to follow this in order of how I put it, you'll benefit the most from. Because the book at the end deals with a lot of the issues that people tend to throw at our former madhabs. So if you follow it in order that I put it there, you will gain the greatest benefits, inshallah. Alright, so now we've left Islam, not literally, inshallah, although some people may claim some of us have, subhanAllah. But how has Iman been understood, preserved, and transmitted by the vast majority of scholars for the vast majority of our history? We've dealt with the first topic. Are you all convinced now you've got to follow madhab? I hope so, because we spent hours. And look, go back, research. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if the vast majority of Muslims, for the vast majority of time, of scholars, haven't followed that. If you can prove to me in Sunni Islam that's not the case, I'll follow that you're wrong. You have from now until Yom Qiyamah. From now until Yom Qiyamah to tell me otherwise. Because 30 years worth of research haven't really found anything else suggesting otherwise. Okay. Question 2, how to recognize who is an authority and who is not when it comes to Iman.
Everyone follows someone, someone's interpretation, views though? Are they qualified? What makes them so, and how do we judge?
Right, the Jibril hadith. Do you remember it? It's probably worthwhile at this juncture going back and reading this hadith again just to refresh our minds. The next 2 lectures is going to be on Iman. On Iman. Alright, what is Iman? And we're going to answer the same questions we've answered previously, but with Iman. Okay? It was interesting, one of the feedbacks in the sheets was, did you learn anything new? And somebody said, no, nothing new. I said, mashallah, that's very impressive. Maybe that person, male or female, can sit here while I can go home. Inshallah. But please, if you let yourself be known, because if all of that you knew, then mashallah, I can take a night off. Bismillah.
Hadith of Muslim that Umar ibn al-Khattab said, as we sat one day with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, a man in pure white clothing and jet black hair came to us, without a trace of trouble upon him, though none of us knew him. He sat down before the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, bracing his knees against his, resting his hands on his legs, and said, Muhammad, tell me about Islam. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Islam is to testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the Messenger of Allah, and to perform the prayer, give zakat, fasting Ramadan, and perform the pilgrimage to the house if you can find a way. He said, you have spoken the truth, and we were surprised that he should ask and then confirm the answer. Then he said, tell me about true faith, Iman, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam answered,
The next 2 lectures is on this.
it is to believe in Allah and His angels, His inspired books, His messengers, the last day, and in destiny, its good and evil. You have spoken the truth, he said. Now tell me about the perfection of faith, Ihsan. And the Prophet ﷺ answered, it is to worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you see Him not, He nevertheless sees you.
And that's going to be lecture 8 and 9. Iman. Ihsan will be lecture 8 and 9.
And he continues to Umar says, then the visitor left. I waited a long while, and the Prophet ﷺ said to me, do you know Allah? Who was the questioner? And I replied, Allah and His Messenger know best. He said, He came to teach you your religion.
Who came to what? Who came to
Teach you your religion.
teach you your religion, which means your religion is based on these 3 areas, which is what? Islam, Iman, and Ihsan.
Another sentence, the use of deen in the last words of it, came to you to teach you your religion. This entails that the religion of Islam is composed of 3 fundamentals mentioned in this hadith. Islam, or external compliance to Allah, with what Allah asks of us. Madhabs.
And that we've done.
Iman, or the belief in the unseen, that the prophets have performed so, and Ihsan, to worship Allah as no one sees Him. Allah in His wisdom has accomplished this preservation in the Quran. By the traditional scholars, He is said at each level of the religion. The level of Islam has been preserved and conveyed to us by the Imam of Sharia, Sheikh, and its ancillary disciplines, madhabs, schools of law. The level of Iman by the Imams of Aqidah and tenets of faith.
The Imams of Aqidah, plural. Right? Tenets of faith. I put that in red to highlight that that's important, because that's what we're going to be talking about.
The level of Ihsan, to worship Allah as though you see Him, by the Imams of Tazkiyah.
Getting texts from this university saying the toilets are blocked up. So, you know why that is? You know why that is? Right? Every single year we have the same problem. Because against whereby the voting is the microphone down. We're still live streaming now. Hopefully people can listen. You know these socks that you guys wear? You know these bloody socks that you guys wear, right? Take them off. when you do wudu, this thing of laziness and wiping up with thin socks, all four madhahib say you can't. See the madhahib we talk about, all four madhahib say you can't wipe over those thin socks. Those thin socks didn't exist at the time of the Prophet. The Prophet were khuffayn, barakallahu fikum. These thin socks from Asda or Marks and Spencer's or wherever you guys get your socks from, did not exist at the time of the Prophet. And because people like to wipe over them, and bits from those socks enter into the drains and lock it all up. That's the reason why. That's why the university like saying, why do you block it up? And then they clean it up and find like bits of socks and then we try and explain why there's socks in the drain. But there we go. All four madhahib. Again, all four madhahib do not allow you to wipe over those socks. They do not fulfill the conditions. When you study fiqh, you learn that very quickly. Until you don't study fiqh, you're going to be wiping over thin socks. And yes, I know Sheikh Fulan and Sheikh so-and-so and Sheikh so-and-so said that you can. Yes, I do. But the vast majority of scholars, you can't. Do you really want to mess up your wudu? Because some scholars say you can. Up to you, inshallah. But can you block up your own drains instead of blocking our drains, please? Do it at home. Inshallah, embarrassing. Anyway, that's my rant today, I think. Alright, 3 dimensions of learning.
Islam, the Shahada, 5 prayers, Zakat, fasting, and Hajj.
This is what you were saying.
Iman, belief in Allah, His angels, the scriptures, the messengers, the last day, and destiny. Ihsan, to worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you cannot, then know that He sees you. Fiqh, madhabs, aqidah, and spirituality with tazkiyah.
Did you get that so far? The hadith of Jibreel, I'll just put it into a very easy form for you guys just to look at. Optically, it's a lot more easier. And that's basically the khalasa, the summary of the hadith that concerns us, inshallah. Again, we are faced with the topic of Iman. Right then, question. What is Aqidah? Just one person? Was it? Yeah. Then you had your hand up. You must be the guy that wrote in that feedback form, nothing new on there. Okay. I'm going to find out who that was. Inshallah. I'm going to ask him a whole bunch of questions to see if it's true or not. So beware whoever he or she is. Alright, what's Aqidah? Creed. Adventist? You guys know that? It's Creed. You like Creed? You like it? But for the others who don't know what you're laughing at, could you explain to them what Creed Adventist is? It's a what?
It's an aftershave.
Aftershave for men.
Females as well.
Huh?
You get some for females. You can get some for females as well.
I'm sure they're happy knowing that. There is no Creed Adventist for women.
No, you get cream.
Creed for women. There's a sales pitch for Creed. Alright, back there. What is Aqidah? Zane.
To have belief in something which you have seen or which you haven't seen.
Belief in something you haven't seen. Interesting. Anything else? Remember your name. Please forgive me. Abdurrahman.
The study of the 6 pillars of Iman.
Jazakallah khair. The study of the 6 pillars of Iman. Where's the mic? Is there a microphone for people? And he has to have that. He's like the official. What about that one? It's like a brush.
This doesn't work.
This doesn't work.
You're going to use yours.
Do I need to use it?
Please,
Please. Why do you say so?
please. I didn't want to cut you off.
Now that you put your hand up. Alright, yes, Abdurrahman. The 6 pillars. When we say Aqidah, we mean the 6 pillars. What do you know about it?
It's complicated.
Why is it complicated?
There's just a lot
There's a lot of what?
opinions.
Is it?
Yeah.
Lots of opinions. Alright? Sisters, anything? You want to share anything? What is Aqidah? I mean, Abdul Rahman, accurately. So what do you know about it? Where's your microphone? Anybody want the microphone? Anybody want to add anything? Bismillah. Based on the fundamental principles. Take the microphone because people on the live stream they can't hear you. If you don't mind.
Based on the multiple principles, like multiple Islam.
Multiple Islams. Huh?
Multiple principles.
Principles. Okay. Such as. Sister, listen. There's no shyness in our deen. Turn your phone off or leave the room, please. Don't disturb anymore. There's no shyness in our deen. The women used to come to the Prophet ﷺ and speak to him in ways that, if I were to explain to you, you'd probably be very shocked. Women, there's no shyness in our deen. Okay, so if you were in a lecture and the teacher asked you a question, I guarantee you probably answer it. So this is our deen. No shyness in our deen whatsoever. Bismillah. Right then. Does anybody want to add anything from the sisters? Nothing? Right. Please turn your phones off. Right then. Have you studied it? Hands up, the minds, hands up if you studied Aqidah. Nobody studied Aqidah. Huh? But I studied. Can you ask me, sorry, can you tell me what you have studied? Just give me an idea of what you've done.
Let's talk about the characteristics of the characteristics that you must have.
Excellent. Do you know what book you did?
We got through things.
Well, you didn't study a particular text. Okay. So, anybody else? Anybody else? Can I say something to you guys? There should be nobody sat here in front of me that has not studied that Aqidah. The fact that you haven't is a massive problem. Massive problem. We should pause on that and move a step backwards. How many of you have studied fiqh, a method? Hands up. What method did you study?
Hanafi.
Excellent.
Shafi'i.
Shafi'i, mashallah.
Hanafi.
Hanafi. Sisters? Right. Who can tell me what Fard Ayn is?
Obligatory.
Where's the microphone? Does he need it? Hassan will give you a break, inshallah. So just pass the microphone. Fard Ayn.
Obligatory on every individual in our ummah.
Every single person, male and female, has to have knowledge of their faith. And I don't mean you go to a lecture and it sounds nice. I don't mean you go to a Jum'ah khutbah and it sounds nice. I mean that you take a method, any of the 4 schools, and you take a very basic book in fiqh, and you learn the fard of wudu. You learn the fard of ghusl. You learn how to do wudu. You learn that which invalidates your wudu. You learn that which invalidates your ghusl. You learn when you have to have a ghusl. You learn how to do tayammum. You learn purification. And then you move on to the chapter of salah. You learn the obligatory aspects of your prayer. You learn what invalidates your prayer. You learn what is makruh in your prayer. And then you learn how to pray in jama'ah. You then learn how to pray traveling prayer and the rules of traveling. And then you learn how to do the janazah prayer. Then you move on from that. And then you move on to the chapter of zakah. And you learn how to do your zakah. You learn when you have to give zakah, how much you give zakah, and whom you give zakah to. Then you move on to fasting. You learn the rules of fasting. When does it become obligatory for you to fast? How do you fast? What ibadah should fast? What is recommended in your fast, and what is disliked in your fast? Then you do the same thing for Hajj. If you don't, you are sinful. I'll say that again. You are sinful. Huh? You are all in sin because you don't know the fault of your worship. How do you do these things? You could be praying and your prayer is invalid. You could be thinking that you don't have to pray. And reality is you do have to pray. You could be doing things that invalidate your prayer, not knowing your prayer is invalidated. Zakat could be owed, and you don't know zakat is owed. And you're in sin all that time. You're in sin. Because the fard ayn, you have to learn it. There is no room for people. The fact that you guys have reached this part in your adult lives, and you don't know this, alright, is no longer an excuse for you, because I've told you. So, give you an example. When I went to study abroad in Yemen, the first time I went, I sat with my Sheikh, and he gave me like a syllabus for me to kind of study certain things. And I looked at the list, and I said to him, Sheikh, I don't know my fard ayn. The things I just told you. And I was about maybe 22. And he looked at me and turned the piece of paper over and wrote me a whole new list of things. Because I knew at that time there were things that there were massive gaps in my knowledge that I knew I had to sort out. But I had to go away to study it. Because in this city, at that time, there was nobody that I could go to learn these things. So you have to, and you are in sin. You are in sin. And I make no apologies for saying that to you guys because it is what it is. But likewise, the same thing for Aqidah. Same thing for Aqidah. Right? What use is it? You're studying a degree and you don't know the fault of your worship. How is your degree going to benefit you on Yom Qiyamah when your prayers are all wrong? Supposedly. Or your zakah is due, supposedly. Let's give you another example. From my wonderful days in Cardiff. As the Imam, a guy came up to me after Salah, after Jummah, and said to me, Sheikh, I've got problems with my wife. I said, okay. And he told me that he had divorced his wife 7 times. Okay. And I was taught by my teacher, Habib Mashur, Sayyid, who was Mufti of Yemen Hadramaut. Whenever you talk or give answers to questions of divorce, get the person to write it down exactly what he has said. And then you get the fatwa on what's been written down. So I said to this man, I said, could you write down everything you said? And he came back later and gave me a long piece of paper with various phrases in which he has divorced his wife. So I counted them all up. There were 9. So I said to him, do you know that in Islam you can only divorce your wife 3 times? Yeah, women can divorce as well, but there's a whole, I'm not going to get into that right now, but it's a different time. My point for this individual, I said to him, there's only 3 divorces. He goes, I didn't know that. And looking back on his list, I said, well, you divorced your wife like 6 years ago. Based on this. On the 3rd divorce that you said on this particular date, you were divorced then. All these years later, you're in harem. He didn't know. He goes, well, I didn't know that. I said, well, that's not my problem yet. Because this is your obligatory knowledge. From ayn. You have to learn this stuff. There's no, what's the first verse revealed in the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? What was it? So why are you guys reading? Why are you reading? I'm reading it to study. Why are you studying your faith? Why have you reached this age in your life You don't know these things. I had an excuse, pretty much. We never had anybody here in the city. We didn't have anybody. We've got several people. We've got a sister here, a scholar in the city, Ustad Najira, who can teach women, mashallah, Sophie is studying with her. You've got this micro-medicine here on your doorstep every Saturday that can teach you this thing. If you're from Manchester, there's people who can teach you. Whatever city you are in, Birmingham, there are people who can teach you these things. The brother from Indonesia, he got taught this when you were young, right? Yeah, and the brother from Nigeria, you get taught this when you know how to bring it's in your syllabus. In this country, it's not part of your syllabus. RE is not going to teach you the Hanafi school. RE is not going to teach you the Shafi'i school. Or Aqidah. So this is you're going to have to learn this stuff. Alright? I hope that's been made very clear. There's no room. And studying it, you can't pick up the book and read it by yourself and say, I'm a Sheikh, or I've read it. No. You're going to go to the teacher, who's going to teach you how to, these things. And guess what? It doesn't take very long to do. Basic book in Aqidah, basic book in Fiqh. An intensive weekend, you can do it. If it's an intensive course, you can do it, inshallah. Or it's online courses, like it's done here in the city, there's online courses, Seekers Guidance, do it as well. MashaAllah, there's quite a few around. But you have to. Everybody's sat in front of you. Yawm al-Qiyamah, you are responsible for your ibadah. If you fail in that, then that's a failing on you. And you're responsible for the repercussions of that on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Happy Halloween. Just scare you. Alright. Science of I was trying to not have too many rants today, but you guys are hoping. Science of Aqidah, or Tawheed, or Kalam. Different words mean the same thing. Bismillah.
Number one, believe in Allah, His angels, the scriptures, the messengers, the last day, destiny.
So, as Abdurrahman rightly said, when we talk about Aqidah, we are referring to these 6 things. So when I say to you Aqidah, automatically you are, in your head, the context is these 6 things. Believe in Allah, believe in His angels, the scriptures, the messages, the last day, and destiny. Fiqh is different, right? Fiqh is salah, zakah, hajj, fasting, business laws, inheritance laws, divorce laws, and everything else. Aqidah is different. Can you see the difference between fiqh and aqidah? Excellent. Right, this is very important. We have a nice big blue circle. In that blue circle are the Muslims. Every single Muslim you can think of. Different groups, different mindsets, different sects, different traditions, different madhahib. They are all within the blue. Alright? Are you paying attention at the back there? This is more important than whatever's going on in the back, trust me. In the middle, you have what's called Sunni orthodoxy. Muslims who refer to themselves as being Sunni, or as classically understood Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Right, who's good at visuals, optics? Nobody but the Sheikh, so I have to ask about the person. What does that diagram tell you? What's your name in the back? Luqman.
Majority of the Muslims in the entire, all the Muslims in the
Raise your voice.
majority of the Muslims are classed as Sunni Orthodox or Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
Okay. That's not the point I was. That's true, but it's not what I'm trying to get at. Anything from the sisters? Equal opportunities, this class. Equal opportunities. Anything from the sisters?
It's that all Sunnis are Muslim, but not all Muslims.
Microphone, because what you said needs to be heard. Just a minute.
It's that all Sunnis are Muslim, but not all Muslims are Sunni.
MashaAllah. All Muslims are Sunni, but not all Muslims. Say it again, say it back to me. I'm tired, one long day. Put the microphone close to you.
It's that all Sunnis are Muslim, but not all Muslims are Sunni.
Does that kind of shatter some of your understandings? Good. Muslims are Sunni Muslims and there are non-Sunni Muslims. Just because somebody is not a Sunni doesn't mean we call them kafir. Just because somebody is not a Sunni doesn't mean they're a kafir. Doesn't mean we excommunicate them. Which is very different to what you see online, in this prayer rows that we have here, and other mosques and other places. Where if you're not part of a particular tradition, you are a kafir. Traditional, Sunni, classical Islam deems that yes, there are people who are Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but just because you're not Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah does not mean you are not a Muslim. Do you get that? I spent a long time trying to put that in a way which you can remember. Rather than putting it into words, put it into diagram. Alright? So what makes a Muslim? Based on the hadith.
Shahada acknowledges facing the Qibla, prayer 5 times a day, and eating halal food.
Listen up. Anybody doing those 5 things, which is what? Shahada. What else?
Facing the Qibla.
Facing the Qibla and praying, yeah? What else? Eating halal. What else?
The 5 farad salahs.
Anybody does that, they are Muslim. Keep your mouth shut. Don't call them kafir. Don't call them anything else. Keep your mouth shut. They have the hurmah. They have the sanctity. The Prophet ﷺ has said that that's a Muslim. Just because they don't follow your method, or your sect, or whatever it may be, as long as they're doing that, remain silent. Can I really get you guys who claim to be Sunni just to accept that fact? It's very important. How much takfir? Takfir means you call someone kafir. How many people have called people kafir? Because they don't understand this. And they go and join the ranks of the Khawarij. They're brothers. That's where they come from the Khawarij. Okay. Questions to the end. You're new, right?
Yeah.
And welcome. Ahlan wa sahlan. We'll have questions. I'll have a Q&A at the end. Should you still have appetite for a Q&A? Inshallah. There's a lot of questions I'm going to ask, and I'm going to say, in semester 2, I'm going to talk about that. Right, what's missing from this diagram? I should have asked this question, but anyway, listen, I hope. What's missing?
Shia.
Nope.
Non-Muslims.
Anyway, barakallahu feek. Non-Muslims. Non-Muslims. You see what I'm dealing with here in the classroom? Non-Muslims. So, non-Muslims are a whole different category altogether. Yes? All Muslims are in the blue. Then there are those who are Sunni or Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. They're in the green. Anybody who says Shahada, acknowledges facing the Qibla, prays 5 times a day, eats halal food, they are my brother and sister, Ahlan wa sahlan. Assalamu alaikum. And I pray behind you. And I want, for those listening online in this spare time who want to say things about me behind my back, inshallah. Hope that's very clear. I know who you are. Listen, you're gonna have some banter, or you go crazy. So I'm very inclusive, despite people saying I'm not. But many lessons in that Bible. Many lessons in that Bible. Right? Okay? Bismillah. Step by step, we'll get you. Bismillah.
During the time of the Prophet Muhammad, it was sufficient for one to restrict his beliefs to knowing the meanings of Surah Al-Ikhlas. Say, He is Allah, He is one. He is one Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to him any equivalent.
Right, so that's the Aqidah, right? So that's Aqidah, inshallah. So if somebody said, what is Aqidah? That's what the Aqidah is. Okay? قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. In the beginning, that's all you needed to know, right? The Sahaba. Done.
However, soon after the Prophet's departure, notions and beliefs from misleading groups ensued. Also, Islam began to encounter the ancient civilizations of the Near East, Greek philosophy. It had to begin dealing with their philosophical ideas.
Right. Want you to, you know when you watch, as you guys do, you watch movies and Netflix and when you watch things on TV or movies, there's a disclaimer at the beginning, strobe lighting or whatever else comes on, you know, to be careful in case you have a weak stomach. I have a similar thing here. What you're about to hear from these different groups and their beliefs may shock you. May shock you. If it doesn't, then I'm shocked. Well, there you go. When I did this a few years ago, in Zane, you remember this, people were very shocked at some of these beliefs and groups. But this is history. Where's Muhammad? He's not here. Sheikh. I told him to be here because he asked this class. He asked me on Friday about this group, and I said, come. Monday. He's not here.
Khawarij, Mu'tazila, Shia, Qadariyya, Zuhriyya, Haruriyya.
Alright. These are groups. Arguably all Muslim, by and large. And within each of these groups, there are different groups. So I don't want to complicate it, and I don't want kind of make things too difficult for you. But after the Prophet passed away, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, notions and beliefs from misleading groups started to come in. And Islam began to encounter the ancient civilizations of the Near East, Greek philosophy. And it had to begin with dealing with philosophical ideas. Whereas now you can't say, when you have people arguing about the existence of God, prove to me that God exists, and you give them a verse of the Quran. And it's, we don't believe in God, let alone the word, the uncreated word of God. Prove to us rationally why God exists. So now I'm saying, Qul Huwallahu Ahad is no longer sufficient. Because now you're dealing with people who are atheists and all these other groups where rational proofs have to be brought in. Rational proofs, which we'll talk about later on today. Listen.
We will explore these groups and their beliefs. How many of these beliefs have you come across?
How many of those groups have you come across? Some you'll be shocked at some of the beliefs that some of you may hold, not believing that they are beliefs that are not part of some Islam. Or you may be surprised at some of these beliefs that have resurfaced. Which I already did. Alright, the Mu'tazila. Who's heard of the Mu'tazila? Alright, okay, good. Zubair. Zuhair. What can you tell me? What do you know?
Were they the ones that were like, if you do a major sin, you're a kafir?
No.
Oh.
I don't know.
Sometimes rejected revelation based on their lack of comprehension.
What does that mean?
So if there's like verses in Quran or whatever it is, and it's explicit, but to them, I'm still speaking abstract.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay, anything? A bit more Abdurrahman?
And they believe that the Quran is created.
There you are. The word of Allah, the Quran was created. And what happened to Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Imam Shafi'i in Iraq with this fitna? His view was very dominant and had the backing of the political ruling parties. What do they have to do? Nothing. Imam Shafi'i had to leave. He went to Cairo and Imam Ahmad stayed behind. Imam Ahmad was in prison for how many months? 28 months, 2 years and whatever, 2 months or so. He was in prison, he was beaten, he was tortured because he wouldn't accept this belief. على كل حال, alright. Right, Bismillah.
The school of speculative theology that was most prominent in the 2nd to 4th Islamic centuries.
2nd to 4th Islamic centuries, very early on, this group existed. How long?
3 centuries.
That's a long time. For those who don't know, that's what? How many years? 200 years this sect was very popular. And the people who ruled by the beliefs of this particular sect.
Also, Ibn Abbas, founder who left the gathering of Hassan al-Basri over a theological dispute.
So this group, started by the founder, Wasim ibn Abba. He was the founder of the Mu'tazili group, who left a gathering of Hassan al-Basri. Hassan al-Basri, anybody know who that is? Abdo Rahman.
التابعي.
Anything else?
Students of Ali bin Abi Talib.
Muslim? I'll take your word for it. Take your word for it. Anything else? He's one of the greatest awliya of Allah, from the Salihin, Hassan al-Basri, one of the greatest saints, pious people of this ummah of the early generations. Famous. And Wasim ibn Abba left a gathering that Hassan al-Basri was teaching over a theological dispute. If you are disputing with Hassan al-Basri, something's wrong. Alright? If you are disputing, if you're arguing with a man of this stature, I mean, some of you've heard of Hassan al-Basri, how many of you have heard of Wasim ibn Abba? Nobody. Tell you something. So what happened?
One who commits major sins is neither a believer nor a disbeliever.
That's what it is. In the middle. Mu'tazila is in the middle. If you commit a major sin, you're not a kafir, you're not a disbeliever. Don't ask me what they believe, because I don't know.
Hassan al-Basri said, Wasil has withdrawn, and they called him and his followers as what he says is.
So the issue is this: if you do a major sin, this founder, this innovator, believe that you are neither a believer nor a disbeliever. And the issue of Hassan al-Basri, as this Wasil left, Hassan al-Basri then said, Wasil has withdrawn, i'tazala, which were the group called Mu'tazila. Because these people i'tazalu, they left. They have withdrawn. Hence the group Mu'tazila comes from the word i'tazal, which means what? To withdraw. Who was to know that this man and his followers would reign 200 years and have so much political power that the likes of Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal is in prison and beaten and tortured? And yes, torture is haram. Are you ready for this?
Their beliefs, they deny the questioning of the grave by the angels who will and heal. They reject signs concerning the end of times, such as the Antichrist, the Juj and the Juj. Deny the existence of the recording angels. Deny the ascension of the Prophet to heaven. They do not believe in the vision of God. The Quran was created.
Right, isn't it?
Oh, the speech of Allah was created.
It's important. Give you 20 seconds to read that again, and I'm going to ask you a question. heard of some of these things on the tongues of people in this day and age? Whether it's somebody relative or person, some of these things you've probably heard. Hands on high. Anybody else? Girls, sisters, how many of you have heard some of these things before? People utter these things. I've come across people who have these views, or at least one of these views. A bit more common than you think, right? So that's which one? Ajib. Right. Who else had the hand up? Which one? Number 4. Ajib, okay. Anything else? At the back, Ibrahim.
Number 6.
Ajib, interesting. Sisters, mashallah, you guys are protected. Number 2, which part of number 2? What do they say? No such thing. Huh? Muslims. Interesting. Very interesting, right? How these things have been repackaged for your millennial ears. Alright, listen.
The Inquisition. The Inquisition. One or two examples of systematic theological persecution in Islamic history. Hundreds of scholars were persecuted, tortured, and even killed over the matter of whether the Quran was created or not.
What does that tell you, please? What stands out? Read that last sentence.
Tortured, killed.
Haram.
Extreme.
Thank you for stating the obvious. Huh?
Forcing their belief.
Yeah, this group got into a position of power that was able to force his views. How can Ahmed ibn Hanbal be put into prison? That takes a lot of political clout. That takes a lot of authority. This group went from this man and went to where it went to. Hundreds of scholars persecuted, tortured, and even killed over the matter of whether the Quran was created or not.
When this is with a
No, is this a question? Question at the end.
clarification question
Okay, listen.
about whether the Quran was created or not, do they mean, so obviously they deny that?
That's a question at the end, inshallah.
Okay.
Otherwise, if I open the door, we won't get done. Like, this is very early on. Hundreds of scholars have been imprisoned and tortured for beliefs that are not in accordance with Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah.
Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal was the foremost of those who stood up to this.
Alright, another group. Qadariyya and Jabariyya.
Qadariyya claim that a man does not need any divine help in his actions. Rather, it is the servant who creates the act.
The servant, male or female, creates your acts. You do it. Right? You do good, you are creating that good. If you do bad, you are creating that bad. I don't want to go too much into this because I don't want you guys leaving with these views. That's part of the problem. You hamster the aqidah and just problematic.
But potential Hadith refers to speak about destiny rather than the actions of the servant. They believe that one's own actions are independent of God's will. I.e., I did this because I wanted to and not because of God. The opposite is believed by the Jabariyya. They reject the free will of man, maintaining that he is compelled to act, having no ability or choice. I did this because God made me do it.
20 seconds. Read it. I'm going to ask you. 20 seconds. I'm going to come back in 20 seconds. I'm going to read that. And then put your hands up and tell me how you encounter these views again on the tongues of people or online. And tell me which one of those views you have encountered. Right, hands up. Which of these views have you come across? Shan,
The bottom one.
which is?
Jabriya.
Okay. What capacity or an example?
It was a while ago, but it was just basically just saying, yeah, I had no choice in what I did. I think somebody did something wrong, and they're like, yeah, it wasn't me, it was God's will.
Anything else want to share? Your name is Mahdiya, right?
Yeah.
Listen.
You know, like terrorists.
Is there a question?
Oh, I don't know. Well, it's not. Yeah.
You have questions at the end.
Oh, okay.
Which of these views have you come across?
The first one.
Alright. Can you give me an example? Just share the example.
Like
Quick
views
example.
from people who believe God doesn't exist.
That's too far out.
Yeah.
These people say Muslim. For Muslims.
I've come across the opposite of the first one and the second one, but not like that. Like as in, I've come across talks where they're speaking against the opposite of that.
Opposite.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Alright, Bismillah.
He would liken and compare God to his creation. A more specific example would be that he would say God is a body or form or destiny.
Oh, they were all smiling then. Yes. You guys are smiling because of the green word, right? We're going to say, are you going to say it? You say it. Everyone was waiting with bated breath. Is Hassan going to pronounce that word? I was watching them. Yeah, he's over here. We're both smiling. I know he's friends with doubting. That word in green, you and I are going to refer to that in many times in the following weeks, in which you'll be saying it in your sleep, that word. Anthropomorphism.
He has a limit and end from the direction he touches his throne with. He attributes God as a physical being, stating that he makes contact with his throne, which is a place of worship for him.
So Al-Karamiya, or Al-Mujassama, are followers of Muhammad ibn Karam, who died in 256. And these individuals and this movement, they would liken and compare Allah to his creation. They were mushabbih. They would make tashbih between Allah and his creation. A more specific example would be that he would say God is a body, Allah has a body, Allah has a form, Allah has a limit and an end from the direction to which it's thrown. He attributed Allah as a physical being, stating that he makes contact with his throne, the Arsh, which is a place of rest for him. How many of you have come across views like this? Oh my word. Or as we say, as you guys say, oh my days. Hands up high. I want to count. For those who are in the live stream, keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, sisters, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20, mashallah. 20 people. Wow. Can we just pause on that? Why is a guy from 1,200 years ago, why have some of you come across his views? Don't give the answer. I'll give you the answer, but it's surprising, right? It's not surprising for me, but I think it should be surprising for some of you that that's very strange. What's happening there? Alright. Al-Murji'ah.
A faction of innovators who assert that disobedience is of no harm to oneself, that God forgives all sins as long as one has faith.
Just pause you. Question. Question. Can somebody be an innovator, a mubtadi', does bid'ah and be Muslim?
Yes.
Hands up. Hands up. Right, let me rephrase that question. Right, some of you are a bit more clever than I thought you were. Can somebody do a bid'ah that is haram and be Muslim? Hands up. Hands up. Can somebody do a bid'ah, an innovation, and still be Muslim? They're Muslim. Hands up. Yeah, actually. These guys are far better than the first cohort. Yes! Somebody can do acts of innovation, but still be Muslim. They may not be classified as Sunni Muslims, but nonetheless they are Muslim. Here's another question. Can somebody have beliefs that are beliefs of bid'ah and be Muslim? Can you have beliefs that are beliefs of bid'ah and innovative beliefs, but still be Muslim?
It sort of depends on it depends on if that belief breaks the what Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said makes you Muslim.
Okay. There are two types of innovative beliefs. Some that take it out of Islam, and some that take it out of Sunni Islam. Right? And as you study Aqidah, you will learn. Alright, Bismillah, keep going.
The faction of innovators who assert that disobedience is of no harm to oneself, but that God forgives all sins as long as one has faith.
Anybody come across this study group for people? Interesting. Muniba, you want to share an example? You can? Mahdiya.
Oh, just some people I know from back home, they just sit and like, oh, I'm human, Allah says man.
Which is massively contradictory because if you believe in Allah, it should matter. You might find an uncle or auntie or cousin, yeah, that probably says some of these things. They tend to be very liberal Muslims, right? Very liberal. Interesting. Hassan.
As a result of this, they frequently neglected their religious rights.
Yes.
It should be noted that although these sects may no longer exist today as recognized groups, several of their beliefs have continued and are heard being advocated by present-day figures who style themselves as reformers.
I've heard 20 of you say that some of these views you've heard before. Every one of those groups I've asked, I didn't do this last time, 3 years ago. I can't do it this time. Just want to see these views that kind of been are still bouncing around here and there. It's interesting to see 20 of you kind of heard more of one view over other views. It's very interesting. And you should think about that as we go along.
Other groups, Khawarij, Sheikh, because of the importance of these groups historically and in the present day, they will be discussed in detail in separate lectures in semester 2.
Yes, because there's a massive amount of ignorance, particularly with the Shia amongst Sunnis, a massive amount of ignorance, which I think is a whole lecture in itself, just to clarify a lot of things. Alright, listen.
The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, this sacred knowledge will be formed by the reliable authorities of each successive generation. We will preserve it and remove it from the alterations of the excessive, the interpolations of the corrupt, and the false interpretations of the ignorant.
Very happy. So that
Allah's promise to preserve this deen manifested itself through scholars who would rise to the occasion and defend the correct Islamic creed from perversion and corruption. Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi.
This hadith is massively important for us going forward. This sacred knowledge will be borne by the reliable authorities, ulul, of each successive generation. In every generation there will be people who will be on the haqq, who will preserve it, remove from it alterations of the excessive, the interpolations of the corrupt, and the false interpretations of the ignorant. I promise for our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we are talking about Iman, which is the 6 pillars. This brings us on to these 2 great scholars of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. Died 324 and died 333 respectively.
Allah's promise to preserve His deen manifested itself through scholars who would rise to the occasion and defend the correct Islamic creed from perversion and corruption.
Sisters, why? Why? The microphone is there behind that lunchbox. Anybody wants it? Bismillah, don't be shy. Why? It's a simple question, but I'm trying to wait for you.
Is it the idea it's the Islam and Quran is supposed to be helpful for all next generations because there aren't any more prophets, so that's the kind of people will be so if it stays the same then people will still if it stays the same then it's more likely to be the faith is the same throughout the entire time. So it makes it easier to follow and hold to the actual truth stuff.
Okay. Anybody want to add anything? Why the scholars manifest themselves in this way? Allah's preservation occurs through the scholars who rise to the occasion and deal with the issues of the age. Okay? I should have deleted that last one. Have you heard of these scholars? Hands up. Who's heard of those 2 scholars? Let me need to count the hands. The scholars, you can say which scholars? See these 2 scholars, Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. You bring your hands up high, but I need to count. How have you heard of these scholars? Hands up. No, 1, 2. Wake up, yeah? So we'll start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, sisters, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so 18 people have heard of those scholars. In that case, what can you tell me? Where? Raise your voice.
I've heard, I don't know exactly, I wasn't aware that they were a scholar, but I've heard the word Maturidi, like a group of people named Maturidi.
Good. Abdurrahman?
Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, he grew up in a household.
Have you read the second slide there? Don't give away too much. Go on.
No, his I think his stepfather was Mu'tazili. I think he was from the lineage of Musa al-Ash'ari.
Barakallah feek, ahsant. I won't ask you anymore because you'll steal the class. Ahsant. Sisters? Those had their hands up. The word 2. The word 2. What can you tell me? waving it around. Right, put it close to your mouth so the live stream.
So they talk about the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must have, and the related characteristics that he cannot have.
Interesting. Good.
And they largely disagree with many.
Fatima, anything from you? No. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. Imam Malik said, after 40 questions, 30 something plus, I don't know. So I'm here to help you to realize and answer your questions. So don't worry, you don't know, these things I'm talking about. I don't expect you to. I'm impressed with our heads so far. Wasn't really expecting as many of you to know as you have. It's good. Alright, Bismillah.
أبو الحسن العشري علي بن إسماعيل بن إسحاق أبو الحسن العشري Imam of Sunnah and tenets of faith, born in Basra in 260. A descendant of the companion Abu Musa al-Ashari, he was a Shafi'i scholar and the founder of the school of tenets of faith that bears his name and reflects his powerful intellect and profound knowledge of the Holy Quran and Hadith.
What do we see from the age 260 after Hijrah?
Very early on.
Very early on, alright? What else stands out? Saeed, what stands out to you?
It came across quite soon after the Mu'tazilites.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. What else stands out? At the back, brother. What's your name again? At the back. Luqman, aywa. Excellent. What else? What stands out to you?
I don't think it's relevant, but spelling is incorrect.
Which spelling?
Chorus with a Q-U-R.
Raise your voice.
It says Quran, but it's spelled correctly.
It depends where you get. Some people say Q-U-R, K-O-R. But is that the thing that stands out for you?
I mean, it was because.
I mean, the fact that he's from, is it descendant from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari? Is that not relevant for you? Stands up? Anything stands out to you? Go.
So he was born in Basra.
Aywa.
Initially, there was a person who has disagreement with Abu Hassan al-Basri, and then.
So he lived at the same time as a sect. The fact he's from Abu Musa al-Ash'ari's lineage is important. That's important. Lineage is important. Alright, Bismillah, keep going.
Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haythami defines Muslims Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah as those who follow Abu Hassan al-Ashari and Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, two Imams of Ahl Sunnah.
Ibn Hajar al-Haythami is a famous Shafi'i scholar, one of the most foremost authorities in the Shafi'i school. And so if you go to the fatwa in the Shafi'i school, what is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? They will say the followers of Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. That's the fatwa in the Shafi'i school. Official fatwa.
The substantive differences between the two Imams amount to about 6 questions. Though because the scholars of the Maturidi school were mainly confined to the lands beyond before the Mongol depredations and estimated thereafter, the Ash'ari school has been the standard bearer of the faith of Sunni Islam for most of its history. Originally educated in the school of Mu'tazilites, initially a student of the Mu'tazili Sheikh Abu Ali al-Jumra.
So he was a student of the sect. He knew the sect because that's what the dominant form of Islam. Very important. Please pay attention to this following point. At any particular time in our history, a particular sect may rule and may dominate. That's why I go back to my initial question. The vast majority of scholars for the what? Vast majority of our time. If you were to look at the time he was in, you would think that's the Aqidah of Muslims. But that's the Aqidah of the Mu'tazili sect. When you step back and look at it historically, a different picture emerges. People pay attention. This point is massively important to me and to you to understand. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Do you want me to repeat it? I will. It's such an important point. Views that are not part of mainstream Sunni Islam may dominate in one particular age, and people may not even realize that those views are not in accordance with Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But because of that age, people think that's the way. And that age was an example of it. And this age is also an example of it, but time will show you what I mean.
Imam Ash'ari saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a dream 3 times. He told him, "O Ali, support the positions that have been transmitted from me, for they are the truth." After which he abandoned what is lights and became the champion of Islamic orthodoxy as embodied in the Quran and Hadith. He openly abandoned this position after finding logical inconsistencies in it, defending it alike from the danger of image worship by interpreting divine attributes anthropomorphically, and the danger of denying the positive significance of the attributes of Allah and the life of the hereafter by explaining them away. Imam Ash'ari did not give figurative interpretations that were to problematic expressions of divine attributes, but rather urged they be accepted as they have come without saying how they are meant, while affirming it that Allah is absolutely beyond any likeness to created things.
That last paragraph, I'm going to explain it in a lot more detail. Just for now, just bear with me, because that needs a lot more explanation. And next lecture, I'm going to break it down because it's such a significant part for you to understand, particularly given the age that you are in.
Though later members of the school did give such interpretations of the ritual of anthropomorphism, preserving the faith of Islam from their innovations in the same spirit and with the same dedication that the Imam had preserved it before them by his rituals of the Mu'tazilites. He authored nearly 300 books and treatises on all aspects of the faith of Ahl Sunnah and died in Baghdad in 324.
Please forgive me, I couldn't find as much depth, so this is quite short.
Muhammad ibn Mahmud al-Maturidi followed the Hanafi legal school, lived in the eastern Islamic world, wrote a large number of important works in the field of doctrine. He expanded upon the doctrine written by Imam Abu Hanifa, who was one of the earliest to write about this matter.
So they're the 4 Imams. Alright, and we've said that they are from the Salaf. Again, you'll get this at the end of the class, inshallah. There's Imam Abu al-Ash'ari, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and there's an Imam al-Maturidi. If you were paying attention, you would realize that one is in one part of the world, and the other is in a different part of the world. Yes? What part of the world was Abu Musa al-Ash'ari? Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari. Basra, which is where? Where was Maturidi? Anybody know exactly where? Come on. Uzbekistan. He's buried there, subhanAllah. I recommend you guys going to Uzbekistan. The history in that place is amazing. The amount of Sunni scholars in that place is very amazing. Can I ask you a question? Can you see the divine hand here in this photo? What were they trying to do, these 2 scholars?
Get rid of like all the bad stuff.
Alright, yeah. Okay, which is interesting. What stands out here? Look at it. What's glaring in your face?
So at the bottom it says the Salah. I mean, it's to me suggesting that they can't keep like what the Prophet was.
That's true. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking something a bit more specific.
They were very early on.
Okay, something else.
They they were a bit after, they came quite a bit after the four items, but they were both very close together in time.
Right. Still looking for the answer.
Throughout history, there were always like ulama who try and preserve the deen and stand up for it.
Right, yeah.
There was always one. There's at least
Just Highlander or something. Joke, the Highlander. Okay, too good.
Yeah, since there's always at least one scholar for each period of time.
Okay, not what I'm looking for.
It's been over 1,000 years since.
Not what I'm looking for. You all right, huh?
The arrow.
Sister.
One is a Shafi Imam, one was a Shafi scholar, and one a Hanafi.
That's interesting.
And they were still both following Ahl Sunnah.
That's an interesting point. Thank you for raising that. That's a point worth mentioning. More interesting than what's been mentioned so far, in all due respect. But not what I'm looking for.
So there's a big the arrow that
Forget that. Stick on this. Go too far. Keep it simple. But put my feet. Where's the microphone? Get this guy a microphone. Get him a microphone. That's it. Everyone listen to what I've been trying to get to about 500 people. The location. That's important. One's over here and one's over there. And Allah has raised them to defend Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in that time. The preservation of Allah happened at the same time. When the Ummah needed it, Allah manifested these two great scholars in different parts of the world. Perhaps they didn't know each other. But at that particular time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His preservation of this deen, brought these two people. One over there, one over here. That's why He said the hidden hand of Allah, metaphorically. Do you understand my point? For me, it's fascinating. For me, it proves the point that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves deen. If you found it fascinating, I found it fascinating. Some of you don't seem fascinating. Hands up who's fascinated. Alright, listen.
You Muslims today know anything about the Ashari and community schools or their relation to Islam?
There was an Arab program, those who have Arab TV, and there was a conference in Chechnya a few years back about who is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and they invited scholars from the Sunni world, predominantly, to talk about what is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in a conference in Chechnya. And it caused a lot of issues because people kind of use political grievances to kind of cause problems. But in this particular Arab TV program, they went around the general public in the streets and I said to them, excuse me sir, have you ever heard of Ash'ari school? And the guy like, what? Have you heard of Maturidi? Like, what? And that's how they went around asking different people. And they got to one individual. Right? He wasn't Arab. He was a convert, African American convert. And they asked him, he said, have you ever heard of the Ash'ari school or the Maturidi school? And he was a student of knowledge, and he goes, yes. There were two imams of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in the two main schools of Aqidah. And the host was quite impressed by that. But he'll tell you something.
What are the beliefs of Sunni Islam? Who needs rational theology anyway? And what relevance does it have today? Many Quranic verses and hadith show that Iman, or true faith, is obligatory and unbelief is wrong and punished by hell. Every Muslim must know certain aspects of the faith, be convinced of them himself, and not merely imitate others who believe in them. The faith God provides for man is expressed in these words. The messenger believes in what has been revealed to him from his Lord. As to the believers, each believes in Allah, His angels, His books, His messengers. We do not differentiate between any of His messages, and they say, we hear and obey. O Lord, grant us your forgiveness, and unto you is the final victory.
Surah Al-Baqarah, well-known verse. Okay?
This verse defines the believer as someone who believes in the Prophet's revelation, in general and in detail. The details have to be known to the few. Moreover, belief means holding on to something to be true, not merely believing what one's forefathers would believe, such that if they were handed down something else, one would believe that instead.
Right. So you can't just blindly follow. See, in fiqh, you can just follow the Imam. Imam says, or the Sheikh says, this invalidates salah, this invalidates wudu. And you don't have to know the proofs. In Aqidah, you can't just blindly follow, you've got to be convinced. Bismillah.
That is belief by blind imitation, without reference to truth or falsity, is not belief at all. Allah specifically condemns those who reject the message of Islam for this reason by saying, when they are told, come to what Allah has revealed to the messenger, they say it suffices for us what we found our forefathers upon. What if their forefathers knew nothing and were not guided?
We're nearly finished, just bear with me. I can sense the room getting tired. So bear with me, we'll finish and we'll have a Q&A. Those who want to leave during the Q&A, you can. At the end of the Q&A, we'll pray a share. We're nearly finished.
Historical proof for rational argument. Nothing else could meet the crisis that Ash'ari and Maturidi face. Namely, the heretical mistakes of the two early proto schools of Aqidah, the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila. The only way to refute the arguments of the Jahmiyyah and of the Mu'tazila was by intellectual means. Necessary to defeat them with rational argument. The challenge facing Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari and Abu Mansur al-Maturidi. Number 1, to define the tenets of faith in Islam and refute innovation. Number 2, to show that this faith is acceptable to the mind and not absurd or inconsistent. And finally, to give proofs that personally convince the believer of it.
So look, these three Imams, the challenge that was facing them was these three things. To define the tenets of faith of Islam and to refute the innovations of the innovators. And number 2, to show that this faith was acceptable to the mind, rationally, and not absurd or inconsistent. In other words, okay, let's put the hadith aside, put the Quran aside. We can prove to you, rationally, that this deen is correct, that this deen is haq, that Allah exists, that Prophet exists. Okay? And to give proofs that personally convince the believer of it. Now, this wasn't done at the time of the Prophet, nor was it done at the time of the Sahaba, nor was it done at the time of the Tabi'een. Why? Because the need did not exist. At their time, the need existed, and they had to rise to the challenge to deal with these issues. You understand that?
Quranic proofs. Allah has not begotten the Son, nor is there any God besides Him. For otherwise, each would have taken what they created and overcome the other. How exalted is Allah above what they describe?
That's a verse of Quran. Right, so what can we take from that?
Premises and conclusions are a God means being with an all-powerful will.
Do you agree?
Yes. The all-powerful will are more than one such being would impose a limit on that of the other, which is absurd.
Do you agree? Two gods fighting each other out and so on and so forth, that would be absurd. Why? Because they would impose a limit. Like the Greek gods, mythical gods. Does it make sense? Do we agree? Bismillah.
God is therefore one, and has not begotten a son, nor is there any God besides Him.
That's called a rational proof. Rationally. Two, if there's more than one God, they will all fight each other and cause problems. But we don't see chaos outside of themselves. We don't see chaos in the cosmos. Everything is orderly. Everything works perfectly right. There's not like one God fighting the God of weather, and the God of weather is fighting the God of this, and the God of this is fighting the God of that. We don't find any of that stuff. Which proves that in absence of that, there's only one God. That's called a rational proof. That's what these Imams... Are we okay? That's why these Imams were trying to do. They were faced with these kind of ideas. Are we paying attention? Huh? We were faced with these kind of challenges that the Sahaba and the early Muslims hadn't. So that's why they had to deal with these issues. Listen, keep going.
Were there other gods in the heavens and earth besides Allah? The heavens and earth would come to ruin. Argument may be summarized as a god means a being with an all-powerful will, to whom everything in the universe is thus subject. If the universe was subject to a number of all-powerful gods, its fabric would be disrupted by the exercise of their several wills, while no such disruption is entered in the universe.
Which means?
God is therefore one, and there are no other gods.
So when they were debating, people who came with this kind of idea, they would use the Quran and say, look, rationally, if this means this, then it means this. And if that means that, then it means only one God. So that's how they could kind of deal with it. So they're using the Quran, but in a rational way, to convince people. And people were convinced, just to wake everybody up. The famous Imam, Abu Hanifa, right? He was once challenged by a group of atheists. And they said to him, we want to debate you. We want to debate you on the existence of God. And Imam Abu Hanifa said, Bismillah, let's do it. And he said to them, I will meet you in a particular place at a particular time. And they said, fine, we'll meet you there. Interesting how the scholars dealt with people. Now, these weren't ignorant people, these were kind of like scholars in their respective fields. And they turned up to the place, and to get to the place that they were that they promised to be, they'd have to get a boat to over the lake to get to the destination. And they did that, and they got there, and Imam Abu Hanifa was not there. And then he said, well, we'll wait for him. So they waited. And they waited. And they waited and waited, and Imam Abu Hanifa was not there. And then he came. And then he came on the boat. And these atheists said, where have you been? We're waiting for you. And he said, you know, something really amazing happened. He said, what? I was at the edge, the embankment, and then these pieces of wood fell down, and they ordered themselves in a particular way, and then nails came, and the boat then kind of just appeared as a boat from this wood, and I just got on it, and it brought me here. And they said, that is ridiculous. How can just wood and all that just come and fall into the lake, and then come fashion itself as a boat, and you get on top of it? That's ridiculous. You're taking the mick. And he said, if your minds can't accept a boat without a maker, how can you look at this great world and everything this world has and still deny a maker? And they said, they shut up. And the story says that they became Muslim. After that, they became Muslim. Fascinating, huh? But you can try that with your friends and your accommodation. Good part of the trick. Alright, listen. Right, what does the average classical work on Aqidah cover?
Classification of topics in Aqidah texts. Divinity, the divine being, Allah and His attributes, nubuwwah, messages and the message, devotion of prophethood and that which is associated with them. Number 5.
Right, so your average classical work in Aqidah is essentially covering 3 areas. The first is ilahiyat, everything to do with Allah. Number 2, nubuwwat, everything to do with messages and prophets. And number 3, as-sam'iyat, which is everything the Prophet informed us of that we have heard about, what we haven't seen. That's why it's called sam'iyat. We haven't seen it, we've heard it. Alright? Bismillah.
Divinity, Allah. The heart of traditional Khalaf theology is that after the Shahada there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And after acknowledging Allah's infinite perfections and transcendence of any infection is
Ah,
obligatory for every Muslim to know what is necessary, wajib to the cover of Allah, what is impossible for Allah, and what is possible for Allah.
Hang on a minute. Say what? What did I say? Impossible for Allah? Did I read that correctly? Was that a mistake? Like the Quran, quote unquote, was a mistake? Impossible for Allah? What's that about? What's impossible for Allah? Allah's Allah. Nothing is impossible for Allah. What is necessary, right, to affirm for Allah, what is impossible for Allah, and what is possible for Allah. Right, Bismillah.
20 necessary attributes of Allah, existence without
You
beginning.
have to read them all out. You have got time, inshallah, but you get the word. These are 20 necessary attributes of Allah. The scholars of Aqidah, Abu Hassan, Abu Ash'ari, and Maturidi, all they did was they looked at the Quran, looked at the Hadith, and said, طيب, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has these characteristics, and they pull out all the attributes that Allah has. And they boiled it down to 20 attributes. These are the attributes of Allah, different than 99 names of Allah. The 99 names of Allah describe Allah, and Allah is Ar-Rahman, very descriptive. But these are attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah exists. Allah is without a beginning, without an end, self-subsistent, all powerful, all willing, almighty, wakada, wakada, wakada. 20 attributes. Every Muslim must know and accept these 20 attributes. Allah's alive, Allah hears, Allah's all hearing. Allah is powerful. Allah is dissimilar to created things. He's unique. 20 attributes that the scholars in the Ash'ari school and the Maturidi school have just formalized it. The same way that the Imams of the four schools took the hadith and formalized it and structured it for you, they just structured it for you. Look, this is what you need to know. If you know this, you're fine. And nobody in this room would have any problems with this. Right, 20 impossible attributes of God. Opposite of the previous 20. So what is impossible? It's impossible for Allah not to exist. It's impossible for Allah not to be hearing. It's impossible for Allah not to be knowing. It's impossible for Allah not to be like His creation and unique. These things are impossible. Do you understand that? Bismillah.
The one attribute made possible of Allah is that He may create or destroy any possible thing.
That's the only thing that's possible. He can create or not. Does Allah have to create you or me? He doesn't have to. Khalas, He did it. Alhamdulillah. Hopefully, if you go to Jannah, Alhamdulillah. But it's possible. It's not impossible, nor is a obligatory, a wajib, something that Allah has. Alright, prophets and messengers. Bismillah. The attributes of prophets upon whom be peace similarly fall into 3 headings. The 4 attributes necessary for prophets: telling the truth, keeping their trust, conveying to mankind everything that they were ordered to. Intelligence. Every prophet has those 4 things. If a prophet doesn't have those 4 things, pay attention, you guys. What's so important? Clarify for me. It's about simplifying the chaos. Clarification, okay. Question is that, we're missing that. I'll ask you. Could it? Ask me though. Ask me. The 4 attributes are impossible for prophets are the opposite. Lying. It's impossible for prophets to lie. Impossible for them to be treacherous. It's impossible for them to conceal that which they were ordered to reveal. And it's impossible for them to be feeble-minded. Right? We're nearly finished, just bear with me. The one attribute possible of them is any human state that does not detract from their rank. eating. They can eat and drink. It's possible for them to eat and drink. Sleeping, marrying, illness, not repellent to others. Although Allah protected them from every offensive physical trait and everything unbecoming of them, keeping them both from lesser sins and enormities before their prophethood and after. And there's a lot there, but we don't have time to go into. But it's in your notes, inshallah. Alright. One who reflects on his 50 fundamental tenets of faith, which students memorize over the centuries, it is not difficult to understand why the Ash'ari or the Maturidi school or Kalam was identified with Islamic orthodoxy for over a millennium. Namely, they are the tenets of the Quran and Sunnah. Following them is a sign of being from Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. In the next lecture, historical and present day controversies. Ahlul Hadith. Maha's not here. It's for him. Well, next week will be the job. Hanbalis and Athari Aqidah. Anthropomorphism. How Ahlul Sunnah has dealt with ambiguous verses and hadiths. And an open Q&A. And here we go. Right. We're going to end on the dua, because I know some people need to leave, but not to repeat again with the word of the dua. We'll recite the Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Thank you for coming, inshallah. Those who would like to leave, you can. Those who have questions, you can remain behind. And at the end, we'll pray a Sheikh, inshallah. Bismillah, first question. How does free will work? Right, I'm going to, those who need to leave, Zane, you're leaving. I always want to start with you. I'll answer that question in a second. Okay, settle down so we can answer this question. Bismillah. Settle down. Abu Bakr, face the wrong way. This way. There. Alright. The question from here is a very important question. I get asked it regularly. And it causes people a great amount of stress. I don't know why. There seems to be more women that have problems with that. I don't know why. More women than men ask me that particular question. Okay, bismillah. The way I kind of explain this is like using a rational kind of thing. Bismillah, let's get going. Those who leave, thank you for coming. How I explain this to people? Just bear with me. I use a female example. A mother says to her daughter, gives her a list of things to buy. Here's a list. Go and buy these things. And she gives her the money. She gives her the money. And the girl goes. On the way, instead of buying what's on the list, she does what? She walks past a phone shop and sees the latest phone gadget and says, I'm going to buy that instead of buying what my mother wants me to buy. And she willingly takes the money and willingly buys the thing that she should not be buying, knowing full well she's disobeying her mother, but willingly giving the money. Then she comes home, and her mother says to her, where is the thing I told you to buy? And she says, I want the latest iPhone instead. And the mother says, but I told you to buy this, you disobeyed me. And then, well, the mother says, I'm going to punish you. Then the mother reveals something. the mother says, because I know you so well, I knew you were going to buy that instead of this. I knew it. And I know you well enough. Can the daughter say, that's not fair? You have framed me. Can the daughter say, I don't deserve punishment? Yeah? Does she have a leg to stand on? Can she legitimately say to her mother, you basically put me up to this? You forced me to do this? She can't. Why? Because at the moment she gave the money, it was her own free will. But her mother, knowing her very well, knew she was going to make that decision. Right? If we step back, it's a crude example, but Allah is the all-knowing. And whatever thing you do or don't do, Allah in His knowledge knows the decision that you're going to make. But at the moment of you making that decision, you are making that decision. You chose to come here. Maybe because of the WhatsApp message, or maybe because of this, or maybe because of that. But ultimately, you made the decision to be here today. Nobody forced you. If they did, good. But ultimately, you made the decision to be here. Allah, in His wisdom, He's Al-Alim, the all-knowing. He's already written down, you are going to come to the class, or you are going to miss the class. So if you look at free will in that context, it makes it a bit more easy. It's a concept that's difficult to understand because our minds are limited. It's just very difficult. But these type of examples, as we say in Arabic, يقرب إلى الفهم. تقريب الفهم. Does that kind of make it a bit more digestible? It's a difficult topic, but ultimately, whatever decision you're going to make, you have the free will to make or not make that decision. But Allah knows the decision you're going to make, and He knows that you're going to end up in hell or heaven. Because He knows. He hasn't forced you. But in His knowledge, He knows. You have free will. The day you get up to pray Fajr, or not pray Fajr, or turn over and ignore the alarm, that's you. No one forced you. The day you decide to do haram, no one forced you. The day you decide to become Muslim, no one forced you. The day you decide to pray and fast, nobody forced you, and you get rewarded for it. Similarly, the same thing is opposite. The opposite is also true. Next question. Ladies first. Not personally, but anyone.
No, but you know how it's like, oh, I did this because God made me do it. So what terrorists fit into that category? Like, do they use that?
That's where you were going with that. Thank you for coming. That's interesting. Why did you ask that question?
I was just thinking of a terrorist group.
No. Good. It's a good question. And do you know why I'm asking? Because I have heard them do that. That's fascinating. Yes, they do. They would kind of use that.
It's not just a bad reputation because of these terrorist group, like just blame it on Allah.
The second semester, I'm going to unravel a whole bunch of things for you. The second semester, please come. There's a lot more there that you'll find very interesting. Anything from our sisters? Fatima? No. Good. Right, Bismillah. Back over here. Share.
So you know the Al-Kawamiyya and the Murji'a?
Say again.
The Al-Kawamiyya group and the Murji'a, is that how you pronounce it? Did they...
Oh, by the way, we're gonna these slides will be uploaded. I'm gonna do this right now while you're talking. I'm gonna send them to Zuhair and Jubair. I'm gonna do this right now, inshallah. And if you can upload them now so people can have them. Right, I've sent it to you guys. Give it a minute or so. Bismillah, aywa. Hisham.
Yeah, so the Al-Kawamiyya and Murji'a group,
Yeah.
any of their beliefs maybe comes from, I don't know, Christianity, because you said
That's very interesting.
God has a body.
Very interesting.
Also, God forgives all sins. Isn't that a big part of Catholicism?
Do you know when the Islam spread, and these scholars now began to have come across other views, and people became Muslim. When they became Muslim, they brought a lot of baggage with them, and that's why some of these views began to spread in, and began to become very more prevalent. Hence, Ash'aris and the Maturidi scholars, they kind of dealt with these issues, expansion of Islam. But yes, very true. That's very interesting. The more you look into that, the more interesting that topic becomes. Zahid was first. By the way, people who began to study with the Ash'ari school, with the Ash'ari and the Maturidi, they became known as Ash'aris. So if you went to study with the famous scholar Ash'ari, your Aqidah was called Ash'ari Aqidah. Like if you studied Hanafi fiqh, you were called a Hanafi. If you studied Maliki fiqh, you were a Maliki. Same way, if you studied with the Maturidi, you became a Maturidi in Aqidah. Doesn't mean that your following him is Aqidah. The Aqidah of Imam al-Maturidi and the Aqidah of Imam Ash'ari is and always will be the Aqidah of the Muslims. Just to clarify that. Bismillah, Zahid.
What is a manhaj? Do they have additional beliefs to the Maturidi and Ash'ari schools? If anyone adds or takes away anything from the schools of Aqidah, is this allowed?
Right. One at a time. What's the first question?
What is a manhaj?
What is a manhaj? A manhaj means a methodology. It's an Arabic word. Methodology. Manhaj. Look confused. I'm trying to simplify. Okay. Ayo.
The manhaj that are out there, some names are like the Diyubandi or the Baralvi or other manhaj.
This is the second semester.
So just leave the question then.
See these questions. To answer all of that, you need a lot more work because you guys have no foundation. With all due respect, you have no foundations. And to answer these things properly, have to, from the bottom upwards, build you up. You may not understand that, but that's what I'm trying to do. Give you a foundation, then these questions can be answered quickly. Okay, I get it. But right now, you are not in a position at the moment for me to kind of deal with that properly in the way that's going to be beneficial. The second semester, we're going to deal with that a lot more.
So you say to follow the majority of scholars for the majority of time. So the Mu'tazilites was around from 200 to 400 AH approximately. So you could say like by the time they were coming to the end, that was about, so they had like half that time. So how do you know that? How would you have known at that point that the Mu'tazilites wasn't like the actual correct? Do you understand?
See him there. See his face. That's what I look like right now. I can tell you. He looks how I feel. Say that again.
So, majority of scholars for the majority of time. So you said the Mu'tazilites was the most prominent, from 200 to 400. 200 to 400 is half the time, approximately. How do you know that wasn't the correct? Because that was the majority of time. Or
they didn't. People in that time, apart from the scholars of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, who Allah, the minority of the people on the haqq were a minority in that time. That's why Imam Ahmed got imprisoned, Imam Shafi went, and so on and so forth. They were minority because the scholars were tortured. They were minority because the overall majority was saying something else. And the political power at that time endorsed these views.
So it was just politically they were strong.
Also probably numbers as well. Anyway,
you know, regarding like the characteristics of Allah, one that I've heard is that Allah can lie. Like that was a mention from the board.
Because Allah can't lie.
Allah can't lie, yeah. Because I've heard like different scholars.
The prophets can't lie. What about Allah?
Yeah, okay, that's
Anyway, go ahead.
You know, in the Shafi'i fiqh, there was that line that you made in red that says, or if you follow the Ash'ari and Maturidi school, that is like the right way. So like, how can a school of fiqh talk about Aqidah? Isn't this like a separate realm?
No, they do. In the books of fiqh, they will talk about Aqidah in the beginning very briefly. study a book in fiqh. We'll talk about in the beginning about the 5 pillars, Arkan Islam, we'll talk about Iman, and then we'll talk about briefly in commentaries, but not much. We're starting a little bit.
So do you know if like the Shafi'i school recommends you to follow the Ashari and the Maturidi?
No.
They don't.
It's obligatory.
Oh, obligatory. So do you know if
And the Ethnic school, we'll talk about the Ethnic school next week. But yeah, for now, just we'll keep it simple, inshallah, because there's another school that happens with Ethnic or Hadith. I'll talk about that next week.
do you know if the Hanafi school like forces you?
The Hanafi school, I'll put on Maturidi. We'll talk about that next week as well.
It's a little bit unrelated, but do the former Dhahib stipulate that for Salatul Jumu'ah, it has to be accessible to all?
Sheikh Harun taught you that, right? As a Hanafi school. The Shafi'i school we had 40 people. Hassan, how many people did we have in Jumu'ah?
200.
So there's the answer. Sheikh Harun contacted me and asked me about that. I found it, to be honest, a bit strange that I was texted and saying, I want to make sure you're not making any mistakes in Jumu'ah. I'm like, who are you? Who are you to say that I'm making mistakes in Jumu'ah? Not you, obviously, but somebody else. I'm making mistakes in Jumu'ah. I've studied 9 years of fiqh, and I'm making mistakes in Jumu'ah. And you guys, these other people, I've done micro-medicine for 2 minutes. It's a bit unrealistic, right? It's a bit unrealistic. Hence, I didn't answer WhatsApp message. Anyway. Nice afternoon, Saturday afternoon I had. Ignoring messages from people.
Sure.
Anyway, Bismillah.
You know, further on that point, you said there has to be 40 people, yeah? So at the dental schools, let's say the Jummah.
These are the opinions that exist that allow for less and that
allow for less.
Hisham. Sorry, I've got to go over there. Anything yourselves? You cool? You okay? Listen, we're back over to you guys. Okay, over here, you like to answer?
So you said one of the groups was said that they deny the Mi'raj or the ascension of the Prophet. So
see that the Mu'tazila were very, if it didn't make sense to the mind, they would, it doesn't make sense in how can someone travel that far in that amount of time? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
They were very rational, too rational. How can you have 2 angels there? When they dug up the grave, there's no angels there. You can't just like, how? A lot of the unseen stuff they had problems with. If you're getting punished in the grave, when we dig you up, we don't see anything. That's what they had a lot of problems.
So do they believe that prophets can lie then?
Why? Why does that matter?
Oh no, because you said one of the tenets of the prophets is that they
Anyway,
cannot lie.
Yeah.
So if the Prophet ﷺ said he ascended,
they would have, they'd probably the hadith of the week. I don't know what they'd say. Who cares? That's what they say. Anyway,
When you said that the Mu'tazil, when you said that them group they don't believe in the vision of God, what does don't believe in the vision of God mean?
in the next world, Allah, don't believe it. And they have their kind of proofs. That's wrong. Wow.
You know the group, the Murji'ah, you said that like they, because of their disobedience, it's like because it's no harm to themselves and that Allah forgives them no matter what, that they tend to neglect some of their rights, their duties as a Muslim. So does that mean like so?
Like for example, a female version of that would be like, sister, the hijab's in the heart. That kind of thing, right? Or Allah knows I'm a good person. As long as I'm a good person, I don't need to pray. Allah forgives me. That kind of stuff.
So yeah, so if you look at like what they're saying that they don't do, because I know it's quite popular in like you see it a lot on like Arab TV and stuff like that, where they'll be talking to a person, asking them do they pray, and they'll say no, but Allah knows that I'm a good person at heart, and so on and so forth.
So, I don't know if that's the same thing as this, because you'll find people who are not practicing will say, look, I'm not praying right now, I know I should be praying, for whatever reason, I don't know, I'm not praying, but they'll say, well, I'm not a bad person. What that means, I feel guilty, I know I should be, but I'm not, I feel bad about it. At this moment in time, I'm not there yet to pray. Ask Allah to give me the strength to pray. But the same thing.
So does that not then take them out of the fold of Islam because it's one of the
Taking people out of the fold of Islam. You guys don't take anybody out of Islam. What you guys do is bring them to Islam. Alright? Because you guys haven't studied Aqidah or fiqh. You guys are just not bringing yourselves into Islam, with all due respect. So taking people in and out of Islam and inviting them to Islam, taking them out, no. That goes to scholars who have knowledge of these matters. So yeah, takfir, doesn't matter who it is. There are people who make takfir of people who pray that prayer and they are Muslim. And they refer them as kuffar. No. Not kuffar. They are Muslim. But there's a stupidity amongst the Sunni Muslims themselves. So much ignorance amongst Sunni Muslims. The fact that I'm having to do a 9-week course just to educate you guys on Sunni Islam tells you a lot. Inshallah, I make no apologies for that. Ayo.
Remember you said there was those like 3 conditions about like that takes you out of the fold of Islam, like facing the Qibla, eating halal
No,
food.
that keeps you in Islam.
Yeah. Like, them 3 things.
What's wrong with you guys trying to take people out of Islam? What is it? I'm trying to keep the men trying to take them out.
How like restrictive is that? Like how
That's taken from a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that whoever faces the Qibla, eats kada, does kada, they are Muslim. It's a very general description of what a Muslim is according to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anybody who does those things, they are Muslim. Ahlan wa sahlan.
So like how strict is it? Like let's say they pray 4 times a day, not 5. Like we don't say it's like that person's not Muslim, right?
Like this goes back to fiqh. Goes back to fiqh. In books of fiqh, they'll talk about time of salah. Somebody leaves salah, right? Somebody leaves salah out of laziness. They're still Muslim. Otherwise, all of you will be kafir by now. How many times have we respected out of laziness? That's a sin. It doesn't take you out of Islam. So yeah, somebody not praying. If they say I don't have to pray because I don't believe prayer is part of our faith. That's what's known as al-ma'lum fi ad-din bil-darura. That which is necessarily known to be part of our faith. Somebody says, I don't believe in God. Maybe that's Islam. Why? That's necessarily known to be part of our faith. Things which everybody knows, basic things are part of our faith. Unless they're new to Islam, which they're forgiven. Ultimately, so leaving prayer, if it's done out of laziness, you're Muslim. If it's done out of, I don't believe in it, then you left Islam. Which doesn't mean I start calling you kafir, because we have the obligation of da'wah. So even them call you to Islam, be nice to you, and try to educate you, help you, so on and so forth. Should you want it? Does that answer the question? Sure.
So, in your career as like an imam and a Muslim chaplain, have you ever come or seen, any individuals, let's say, like become
You left this too late.
become radicalized?
I just remembered you. Ask that earlier next week. That takes a good. This guy is amazing. Next week, ask it a bit more earlier, rather than 10 minutes before we finish. Inshallah. Good question, which we'll get next week. And answer a bit more earlier. Listen.
Sheikh, there are some people that say that.
Let's keep it silent so we can have the listen.
Some people say that Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari
changed his thing.
Yeah, he wrote the book.
Load of rubbish. Changed it. Anybody that has problems, before he died, he changed. Really? طيب, خلاص. Habba. Let's say he did. We're not following him. We're following what the Quran and the Sunnah says. So let's say he rejected it, which he didn't. But let's say he did. Doesn't take anything away from the legitimacy of what he was saying. It's still right. So yes, let's say he did, but he didn't. What he was saying is correct anyway. Which is proof we're not following a man. We're following the tenets that are in accordance with Ahl Sunnah and Jama'ah, the Quran and Sunnah. We're not following the man. But he didn't. That's false. The same way they say Imam Ghazali changed, blah, 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 all the usual rubbish. We'll say. All
Was Imam Ahmad the ones who dealt with the Mu'tazilites, or was it the two?
Both. They all in their own way. But I think that I didn't put it in the slide, but what they did when they it's next week actually, next week, when they dealt with all these views head on. All these groups, Mu'tazila and Kada, they dealt with them head on, particularly Mu'tazila. And they kind of basically wiped them out, not through knowledge, and they kind of became extinct and died away. And Allah raised Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah through these great Imams. Just like Allah raised Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah through the 4 Imams of Sunnah Islam. Muslim.
What would be the status of people who reject hadith, like the Sunnah, and people who reject certain explicit verses in the Quran, like they reject like a ruling that is explicit in the Quran?
It depends. My teachers teach me not to take people out of Islam, and be very careful of pronouncement of takfir. Like my teachers specifically, and generally, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, be quite careful to kind of point to accusation of kufr. So because if you get it wrong, it's on you. It's back on you. That label, call someone kafir, that comes back on you. But generally speaking, if somebody rejects a verse of Quran, generally speaking, a verse of Quran is rejected, right? And that person is not new to Islam, then that person has left Islam. But we go back and we change them, and we help that individual explain. That's that person. But if a person says, I reject a particular verse of Quran, or any verse of Quran, that's massively problematic. Less so with hadith, less so. Less so with hadith. It depends. Certain hadith are mutawatir hadith. If you reject them, then you're out of Islam. If they're mutawatir, how many Sahaba saw that happen? That has a level of a verse of Quran. There's hukm.
Would it be the same for a hadith that is mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim? Because I think I've heard.
Not necessarily. Take it out of Islam, it's not that clear cut. Not black and white. I mean, look, until you learn it, difficult to converse out, but even people who come back on the deen, even these guys as well, in all honesty, is finding someone that can teach you who is grounded. Sometimes you may get delayed in finding people who are grounded enough to teach you, so you feel comfortable, and you can teach it in a way that you can understand. So all these things may delay people's journey, obviously to the converts. And converts may go from this group to that group and kind of fumble their way around until they kind of find where they need to be. That's also problematic for a lot of converts. Abba, did you finish that question?
Because obviously, like you yourself have like studied like some fiqh and aqeedah for like many years, many like you mentioned like for 9 years, and obviously knowledgeable individual. Will you yourself be able to make like say this person this or this person that, or
if you come to these classes, stick with these classes, do the class I've done before, and continue on to semester 2. I won't need to tell you anything. You have to see yourself. You have to keep coming. You have to listen to what the class I've done before, follow all the way through. I won't need to tell you, you do it yourself. So I'm empowering you to do that in a way you don't know yet. So I'll give you the keys to do that yourself, without even asking you. Which then leaves me alone. You guys can leave me alone, don't bother me anymore. Definitely.
Who are Hizb ut-Tahrir?
What is it with you and these questions, mate? Hizb ut-Tahrir. Why do you? I'm going to sit down for that one. Why do you ask about Hizb ut-Tahrir?
Because Majid Nawaz.
I don't.
Yeah, so because like, you know how he used to be he was a Hizb ut-Tahrir and then he became, you know, a government-funded stooge.
Allah Alam. Be careful. Because you're going to have, and you're not if you're wrong, he's going to get you for backbiting. So Allah Alam. Be careful.
No, but just, I've heard of this group a while and then I've heard that
So, okay, one thing at a time, and each of these questions is literally a PhD worth of time. Each of these questions is a PhD. People have done PhDs on the topic of Hizb ut-Tahrir. طيب, Hizb ut-Tahrir, HT. We're going to deal with it in semester 2 in a bit more detail. It's a group who, after the dismantling of the Khilafah in 1924 by various forces, various Muslim groups came together to work out how to re-establish authority, particularly political authority. And it was seen that because of the collapse of the Khilafah, a group like Hizb ut-Tahrir came about and said, we need to re-establish the Khilafah. Pay attention. Hizb ut-Tahrir is all about re-establishing the Khilafah. But they have views that are in line with the Mu'tazila. It's historically true. And some of your parents, if they were at uni, and that's why I'm laughing. Some of your parents probably at uni at that time maybe might have been members of Hizb ut-Tahrir, or might have attended their classes, or might probably had no friends or new friends who were part of Hizb ut-Tahrir. No one as powerful and as relevant as they once were, but they swept ISOCs away back in the day. Very, very intelligent young men and women, very organized, but they had a lot of flaws in terms of their aqidah and in terms of their fiqh. Big topic. It's a lot of memories. Ask if your parents went to uni in the UK, right? Ask them about Hizb ut-Tahrir, HT. Ask them. There's no main difference. The 6 points, minor points, very, very. Arguably, there's no difference. Arguably, no difference. Just like very slight, minor differences. And can somebody, without revelation, come to the conclusion that Allah exists? There's a difference between the Ash'ari school and the Maturidi school. Some of them say, well, if you just sit and look around the world, you come to the conclusion that Allah exists. And other schools said, no, we've got to have certain things beforehand. There's a bit of a difference there, minor differences. Overall, they're very, very similar schools, inshallah. I don't know what anyone would say.
Does the Aqidah say anything about whether the Prophet was like just an ordinary man or just a prophet in general, or because
that's more like issues of hadith. The Prophet was a man, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he was an angel, or wasn't from other type of creations. He was a man, not like any other man. Rajul laysa kadhalik.
Because some say that he was made of light as well.
There's hadiths to suggest that. And there's some weakness in the hadith, but ala kulli hal, what we do say is that he was a man unlike any other man. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And his family unlike any other family.
This is a bit annoying, but I'm going to go back to that Jummah thing just for myself. I trust you and I trust the advice you've given to me, but you say that, obviously the Hanafi school was saying the Jummah has to be accessible, and you have a Shafi'i opinion, and that's all fine and that's all good.
Even amongst the Hanafi school, the Deobandi says permissible.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. As a Hanafi, if I'm following the Hanafi school or the majority opinion in the Hanafi school, I don't know if it is, but this whole accessibility thing, is it on my head then if I'm leading a Jummah, if I'm being Khatib, and then I'm taking a Shafi'i opinion? Should I be taking?
You don't take the Shafi'i opinion because the Deobandi school has a fatwa that allows Jummah in prison, for example. They allow it. So, okay, you can understand. Speak to Sheikh, I will tell you about the fatwa of the Deobandi school. That allows for it. Fadal, what's your name?
Abdul Wasi'.
Abdul Wasi', Allah yawasi'ak.
Ameen. A few weeks back, near the time of and the death of Yusuf al-Qaradawi. There was a discussion going around saying, in regard to him saying words of kufr or words of taking someone out of the deen of Islam.
See, there's a rule. We don't mention scholars' names. Alright? Because Ali Rahmatullah passed away. Mention the question without mentioning the name of the individual, which is now a bit difficult anyway. But yeah, it's very important. Guys, going forward, don't mention people's names, particularly just passed away, because people have sensitivities, and I don't want to be standing on people's feet with all deference to these particular scholars. If it's online, just ignore it. He's passed away, Ali Rahmatullah, he did a lot of things. Some people don't see eye to eye with him. Yeah, if you guys need to leave, just will we stop you? Anyone? Any more? No? Going, cast. Make the adhan with the Thank you for coming. Please keep coming.